Hey guys, what's up? In this video, we're gonna learn how we can create a fully customizable and responsive progress indicator component in PowerApps. So before we start, welcome to my channel. I'm Deepak Shrivastava, and if you have not yet subscribed, go ahead and click the subscribe button and also the bell icon. So next time you know when I'm going to release a new video. So what is progress indicator? So the progress indicator is a functionality that allows us to visually see the status of a workflow. So this is an example app that I'm using for the document review process. The document can have multiple reviewers and also can have multiple approvers. At the given point of time, I like to see where the document is sitting right now. Let me drill down to one of the document. So this is the document. I have the information about the document and some other detail. That's not the point. The point is what you're seeing on the top. That's the progress indicator component that I have built. And what it is showing me right now, it is showing me who has completed with the dark background green and the tick mark, and the light background green is in progress, and gray is something that is not started. One example of progress indicator. If I go back to my screen and if I change the type, let's say I want the indicator should have the circular background instead of rectangular. I click there. Now you have a circular background with the icon. Now let's say you want the icon with the rectangle background. And when I say icon, previously you have seen there's only tick mark. Let's say you have your own custom icons that you like to see in your indicator. So now we have the custom icons here, right? With the small green dot and the light green dot that's showing me whether it's completed or in progress. Similarly, you can have another option with the circular background. I can go there. Now let's say you like to see the image of the person who it assigned to or who has completed. So now you can see there is a background image. So you see different combination of the indicator that people can use. Now what if I say all of them were horizontal, but in my app I need this to be a vertical indicator. So if I change this to vertical, and now you have vertical component, right? Similarly, I can keep changing the type. Let's say I want the circular background. I can go ahead and have different pattern that we have in horizontal, now in vertical as well. So you have seen 5 different combination in horizontal and 5 different combination in vertical. So total 10 different type of indicator that we can have, right? Now, if you think like that, if I need to build a component, so do I need to create 10 components to fulfill all these different scenarios? Or can I create just one component and use it the way the app maker want it to be used in their apps? The answer is 1. Okay, and that's what we're going to do today. We are going to build this highly configurable component that will have different properties in it that the app maker can set the way they want the indicator to be used in their apps. Okay, if you like it, stay with me and we will start. So before we start, let me give you a quick background of what this component is all about in PowerApps. So the component in general is something that you can think like a reusable set of functionality that you can use again and again into different apps. Now the second question, where we can start creating the component. So if you log into make.powerapps.com and if you go to the apps, generally what we do, we start creating apps. Under the apps, we click on the new app and this is where we start. If you want to create a component, what you need to do, you need to click on this component library, okay, and start creating a new component library. Component library is nothing but a place where you can have multiple components altogether. Just like a collection of components. Okay, so click on the new component library, give a name. So the component library will create, and if you look at here, it looks exactly like you are creating an app, but you are in the component section here. Okay, so this is our dynamic progress indicator component. The first control that we need in this container is a gallery. So I'm going to insert a vertical gallery here. Okay, now we need to set some property of this gallery. So I want this to be start from the top. Height and width should be the parent, that is our component. Okay, as you know, if we have the gallery, it should have some data. So this requires us to create the first property in our component. So select the component and you will see here the custom property. Custom property are something that you can create for any component. These property allow you to make this component more dynamic. Okay, so click on the new custom property, and the first property that we are going to create is the data. And this property is going to store the information that we are showing in this progress indicator. So that is actual data that we're going to pass here. The type of property is input, and the input property is something that this component is looking to you to provide input. The output property is something that this component is going to provide to you. Okay, so this is the difference between input and output property of any component. Type is a table, because this is a gallery and we want to have a collection of different progress status. So we are creating this as a table. Click create. Now in each property we need to, or we can set up a default value. Okay, generally when you create a table, this is going to be the default value, but this is not what we want. So I'm gonna replace this with a structure that I'm creating for this component. So I want that each progress should have this information: ID, the information 1 and information 2, that's the information that you can display, icon, image, and status. Icon if I want to show icon, image if I want to show the user image, and what is the status. Okay, and then come back to this gallery and change it, the data for this gallery to the name of your component dot the property, and you should see the property here. There you go. Now you can see the image and you can see the information. The title 1 should show the information 1, and title 2 should show the information 2. I don't want separator, so I'm going to delete that. Okay, now the next thing that we need to make this component work, we need some container here. So click on this plus icon, go to the layout, and insert a container. Okay, and remember this container should go inside the gallery. Okay, it should not go outside the gallery. Okay, some change in X and Y. So this should be 0 and 0. I want this to be start from the beginning. The width of this container should be parent, that is the gallery in this case, dot template width. Similarly, height should be the parent dot template height. Okay, so we are just making it same size as the template of this gallery. Then we will align this vertically as a stretch. So there's another change you need to do. Then the next what we need to do, select this same container, insert 2 more container inside this main container. Okay, so I added 1 container, go back, select again, and drop another container. Perfect. So now we have a container. Inside this we have 2 containers. That's the structure of our progress indicator. Okay, let's update some property of these container. So the first container justify should be the center justification and should be stretch. The container 3 should be center align. Okay, so we have our structure ready. Now let's make some changes so that we can make it more responsive and configurable. Okay, so let's go back to the gallery, because this is where we're going to start to make it responsive. Now if you notice, the rep count of this gallery is 1. It's good if I'm showing this gallery like vertical, like you're seeing right now, but if I want to use this as a horizontal, then I should be wrapping this 4 times, because I have 4 items, right? Okay, so I need to set this rep count dynamically, and I need to know whether my component is in vertical stage or it is horizontal. And how I know that? With a property. So let's create a second property, and the second property is layout vertical. That's the name. You can choose any name, but this property is gonna set, and it will tell me whether the component needs to be vertical or horizontal. This property type is true false. Create. Okay, so the property is ready. Now let's go back to the gallery and a simple formula. So what we are saying, if the component is layout vertical property is true, then the rep count is 1, else whatever number of rows that we have in the data, it should wrap. Okay, pretty straightforward. The second is the template size. We also need to work on the size of the template. We're going to use very similar formula that we have used in our previous example. If the component is vertical, like what we are seeing right now, then the height or the size of the template should be the parent.height, that's the total height of this component, divided by the number of rows or number of items that we have. And if it is horizontal, then whatever the height should be the height. Okay, so we done with the gallery. Now let's move to our container, and let's check the first container. Let me rename this. So the first container I'm calling my template container. That's my main container. And then the first container that I have after that, it is for my icon. So that's what you're seeing. Either you can use icon or the image. And the second container is for information, what information you wanted to show. Okay, so we're done with the naming. Now let's understand the layout, what we are creating. So we have the main container. Right now, if you look at, this is the horizontal in direction. So any control or container that you're going to add inside this container template, they are going to horizontally align, like side by side, as you can see here. If I change this to vertical, then if you notice, they are vertically aligned, correct? To make this component is dynamic, we need to dynamically know whether this component is in use vertically or horizontally. And based on that, I need to change these directions. Okay, and how we can do that? So go to this direction property. And again, you need to replace this with this simple formula. Formula again is very straightforward. If the component property that is telling us the vertical or horizontal is true, then I want every control inside this container to be horizontally aligned, right? And else it should be vertical. Similar change we will do to this container icon. So go to the direction of the second container that we have and replace this hard-coded value with the logic that we have or the formula that we have. But this is going to be very straightforward. If the layout is vertical, then this should be vertical, else it should be horizontal. Okay, and the information container always going to be vertical, so you don't need to make any change here. Okay, so we good here. The next, we need to set up the height and width of these two container. Okay, and everything is going to be driven based on that property is layout vertical or not. So first thing that we need to do, we need to make sure that it's centrally aligned. Okay, so click on this center align, click on the height, change this hard-coded value with this formula, and the formula is if it is vertical, then parent.height, and if it is horizontal, then it should be just divide by 2. We don't want flexible width, so we need to turn this off, and then we will set the width. Okay, again replace the width with this formula, and formula again very straightforward. If it is vertical, then the width of this container is going to be parent width divided by 3, and else if it is horizontal is whatever width of the parent. Okay, now next move to the information container. So height for this information container is going to be parent.height divided by 2, so we are setting it half. The next is the width. So again, we don't need flexible width, go to the width property and replace this with this formula. If it is vertical, that parent.width minus parent.width divided by 3. Okay, so our layout is ready, and now we need to add the control inside this container. Okay, so I'm gonna move this icon from here inside the icon container. Okay, so I'll move it here. You don't need the on select, so I'm going to comment this out. Now let me set the height and width of this icon. Align it to center, and the width of this icon going to be, and the formula is again based on the layout. If it is vertical, then parent.width, else divide by 3. Okay, width, and then let's go to the height. We are going to use, for height, we are going to use this formula. So if it is vertical, then parent.height divided by 3, else parent.height divided by 2. I'm going to make this image hidden for some time. Okay, then let's see what this error is all about. So y. Okay, so what should be the y of this? Very simple, you don't need to worry too much about it. It should be 0, and x also should be 0, because we are adding it inside the container. It's going to automatically adjust itself. Okay, and one thing I will do, if you notice, the background of this icon is transparent, so I need to give some background so we can see it properly. So okay, so I'm going to give some light background, and we can also make it more configurable. So for example, if you want to color the background based on the status like you have seen in my demo, so what you need to do, of course, again, if you need any configuration or customization in your component, you need to create a property. So let's create a property for the color. So go back to your component, click on the new property, and we are going to create a property called status color. And what this property is going to help us, it's type record, and you can set up that what should be the color based on the status that we have in data. So if you go to the status color property, because this is type record, you can pass a record like this. And in my data, I'm passing these hard-coded status: completed, in progress, not started, rejected. You can have your own status if you want. And based on these status, what should be the color? And this color information you can actually change while you're using this component in your app. Let's go back to the icon. And now I'm going to go to the fill property and write some logic here. Okay, so the logic is very simple. I'm just adding one switch case here. And based on the status that we are getting from the data, I'm just picking the color for that particular status. Okay, perfect, right? So as you can see here, now color has changed. Couple of more changes. I don't want that padding for 10, so I'm going to just make it 5. And then I'm going to use the check as a default. Now, one more configuration here. So you don't want the check icon all the time. You should have the check mark only if that is completed. If it is in progress or if it is rejected based on our status, you want to change that icon. So we can actually have that logic also here. So click on the icon property here and then replace it with this switch function. So if it is rejected, then I'm going to use the cancel. If it is completed, then I'm going to use check. If it is in progress, I'm using check. You can use another one as well. And if it is not started, I'm just not using any of the icon. So as you can see here, now we have our background icon is ready, but we need to connect these together, right? So they should be connected. So for that, what I'm going to do, select this icon default, go to the icons, and we are going to use 2 rectangles here. So one, so this I'm calling my start line. So there's a line on the top of the icon, and the second is the end line. That's the end line of the icon, and we need to readjust. So inside the container, you can reorder these different control that you are adding. So I want the start line to be on top, then I want the icon, and then I want the end line. Okay, perfect. But it's not really looking good, and the reason because we have added these rectangle. Now we need to make their height and width adjustable based on the layout where we are. Okay, So let's start with the first one, the start line. First thing that we need this to be centrally aligned. Okay. Then we need to set up the width, the formula, how it's going to look like. So if it is vertical, line width should be 1 because it's vertical. If it is horizontal, then we are saying parent width divided by 3. Then we have height, and height is very much reverse of what we have did on the width. So we are saying if it is vertical, then parent.height divided by 2, else it should be the 1. And then you can change the color. If you don't want the blue, you can make it black or dark gray or whichever color you like. Similarly, we need to do for the end line. Okay, central line, width, actually very similar how we did to the first one. There is no change in the height. Okay, so this part is done, and as you can see here, I have these lines between these different status background. But if you notice, there is one line on the top and one line at the bottom. We don't need this, right? So if this is the first item, right, because this is the gallery and this is the first item. If this is the first item, then we don't want to show the start line. And if it is the last item, then we don't want to show the end line, right? Because we are inside the container, if I just use the visible property, what's going to happen, it's going to resize everything. So it may not look good. So instead of making visible true false, what I'm going to use this color property. Okay, so the fill property, I'm going to use a formula. So the formula is very simple. This item.id, and if you remember in our data property, we have this id column, correct? So what I'm saying, if this item.id is first item in the data, then make it transparent. So don't make any color, else it will be black. So for the first item, it's going to be the, similarly for the end line, I'll go to the color, fill property, same function, but now I'm using the last. So if it is the last item, then don't show it. Perfect, right? Now let's move to the information. Okay, so I'm going to copy the subtitle and the title, Control X, select the information container, Control V. Okay, so what I'm doing now, in the information, I'm moving my title and the subtitle. Okay, and error that you might be seeing is because of the select parent, so I'm going to just avoid that. And the width. Okay, so the width of our first label is going to be the parent dot width. Very simple, right? So whatever the width of the parent, that is the information container, that's going to be the width of my title, and subtitle is dependent on the title, so this also be the same. As you can see here, if you look at the width of this one, it's saying title1.width, or you can say parent.width. Okay, so width is good. Now we need to set the height for these two. I'm going to select both actually, because they both going to have the same height. Parent.height divided by 2. Now this is the point here, because I have only two information here, so I'm using height divided by 2. Let's say you want to show more information, 3 or 4 control. You just need to divide the height by number of control that you are adding, so they all have the similar height. Or you can have the different height for different control. Okay, then I need to change the font size also dynamically based on the height. So whatever the height of this control, divided by 3 is going to be the font size. And I also want text aligned center. Similarly for the second label information, the font size I want divided by 4, and you can adjust this. One more change I will do it here, the vertical align property. So you need to go into search for that if you don't see it, and I want this to be center or the middle. Okay, so that's it. Actually your component is ready with the status indicator here. To just quickly test, you can go to the screen here, and from the custom you can drop that component that you just built, and you can see how this is working. And as you can see here, the component is working as we have created. Now if I change the layout from vertical to horizontal, and if I resize it, so now I can use the same component as a horizontal component. Awesome, right? Now, if you remember, the component that I have displayed on at the beginning has so many different kind of background that you can change, right? So how you can do that? You remember we have used this icon default, and it has some property. So let's say you don't want to use this icon default. Instead, you want to use the image. So let me do this. Let me cut it and then paste it inside this container icon, and we need to reorder and move it up so that it can be between the start line and end line. And then what you need to do, whatever configuration I did for this icon, you just need to use the same icon for image or any other type of control that you wanted to see here. I'm gonna just quickly do that, copy every property that we have here, height, width, X, Y, and all of that. Okay, so what I did, I just copy every property that we have here, like height, width. Now remember one thing, because you have multiple control here inside this container, if you display all together, like for example, let me do that. So if I make this image visible, you notice right there, like upside down. So you need to make sure that if your image is visible, then you don't need this default. I'm going to make this height, and now you have your image ready. And if I go here, it should work as expected. So now, because we want to make it dynamic, and as I said, you remember, if you want to make anything dynamic, then you need to create a property. So one more property that we will create, and we call it is background is image. Again, this is true false property, create. And I'm going to use that property to show hide these image or icon. Okay, so the visible of this will be the name of your container component dot is background image. So if it is true, then show the image. If it is not true, and you can see now, correct? So this property is working as expected. Yeah, so that's it. This is how you can create. And once you're done, go to the file, save and publish. Okay, and once you do that, if you go to your Power App, okay, so this is your Power App. What you need to do, you need to go to this plus icon, go to get more components, and then here you should see the component that you have just built. So we built the demo component, and this is our component, dynamic progress indicator. Click import. Under library component, you should see it. You select your component is here. You have all the property that you have added, and you can play with those. Right? Perfect. So this was the part of how you can build a component and start using it. Let me show you how you can use the component that I have built. Of course, I'm going to give you a link so you can download that component. And once you have that component, how you can use it in your app. Okay, so once you download the component file that I have a link below, you will get a file. Okay, you will go to the apps like we did. You go to the component library. You will open the component library where you want to import the component that I provided. Okay, then you see in the new component, and you see these three dots. You click there, and then you will click on import component. You will see the list of components. Those are available here, but also you can upload a file. Click there, look for the file that you downloaded, select, and then you can have my component listed here. Okay, step number 1, how to use it. Now let's say you don't want to use my component. You have created your own component, and you want to use this component in your apps. Okay, so let me show you one sample app that I have created, because the only thing that you need to understand or learn how to set these property correctly. Okay, so I have this sample app that I have created to display or show you how you can use this component, or actually any component that has properties in it. Okay, what you're seeing right now here is the component that I have built, and it has all of these different property, or you can see on the right hand side. So the data property is the first property, right? And if you look at here, I am passing one collection. Right, this is my current item. Okay, this is the collection. So to set the data, you need to create a collection that can have the similar data in similar format, not the number of item, but they should have all these properties, Like every item, you can have 1 or 2 or 10, it doesn't matter, but all should have this information. And how I'm doing in this app, what I did, I connected to one of my SharePoint document library, and on select of any item, I'm just collecting this information. So I'm creating this collection, and if you notice, similar information I'm passing. ID information 1, I'm passing the display name, the status. This is coming from my SharePoint columns, right? Icon person, then image, and other information. Okay, so this is how you can do the data. Okay, and then we have property, this layout vertical. So this property is going to allow you to set this component either vertical or horizontal. And then we have is background image. This property is to set if you like to see the background as user image or not. So if this is true, then this background will be the user picture that you are passing in your data. Then we have background circle. So instead of, if you want to see the circular background instead of rectangular, then you need to set this property true. If this is false, the background will be rectangular. Then we have show indicator icon. So if the show indicator icon property is true, then you will see those small indicator icon that is for whether this is completed, in progress, or not started, or rejected. And then the last property we have is default icon. And if this is true, then you will see this default behavior. So rectangular background and tick mark as an icon. Okay, so these are the different property that I have in my component, and the component that we have built, you have also created some of the true false property. So to work with these true false property, what you should be doing, each of this property should be assigned to a particular variable. Like you can see here, I have a variable that I'm setting up this property with. And based on your need, you need to set that variable true or false to make that behavior. Okay, so for an example, let's say the vertical. So if you want this component to be a vertical component, then I'm setting this variable false and then true. So finally I'm making it true. If it is a horizontal, then I'm making it true and then false. So I'm making this layout variable true. Similarly for other property, same thing, you need to set that variable to the desired result that you want. Because this is the demo app, so I added these button. Most probably what you're gonna do, you're gonna add the same concept of setting these variables on visible property of your screen or app on start. Okay, so opening the screen on visible, you will set the desired combination of these variables, and based on this result, your component will react. Perfect. Okay, so that's it, guys. I hope you liked. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing to my channel. Keep learning.